Folks, we're about ready to get started. We're going to let a couple more people who are in line signing in get in here, and then we'll get started with the hearing. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the public hearing on the estimated fees for the MESA, the Municipal Emergency Services Authority of Lancaster County. My name is Debbie Dopler. I represent Mountjoy Township on the board, and I am the chair. I would like to thank Eton Brethren in Christ Church for hosting us tonight, so thank you to them. And we are going to open the public meeting now. When I do the roll call, I will call each member's name and their municipality so you know who is up here as representatives. So we have Mr. Butler from East Donegal Township, Mr. Hershey from Elizabethtown Borough, Mr. Hudson from Marietta, Mr. May from Elizabeth Township, Mr. Risser from Conoy Township, and Mr. Snyder from West Donegal Township. Now, when you came in, there was a podium for you to sign in. If you did not sign in on your way in, please sign in on your way out so that we have a record of who was here. So I'm going to ask Dave Jones to come up. He is the solicitor from MESA, and he will have some comments and talk about the purpose of the hearing.
Thank you, Deb. As indicated, my name is David Jones. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Stock & Leader, and I am the solicitor for MESA. Now is the time, the date for the public fee hearing for the administrative services to be provided by the Municipal Emergency Services Authority of Lancaster County, or MESA. MESA was formed pursuant to the Pennsylvania Municipalities Authorities Act. Under the Authorities Act, before a municipal authority may provide services and incur debt obligations, it must conduct a public fee hearing that outlines the following information. 1, the proposed administrative services that the authority will provide. 2, the estimated cost of such services. And 3, the proposed method of assessment and charges. Once this information is presented, the authority will then receive public comment from interested members of the public from yourselves. Once the hearing has been completed, anyone objecting to the proposed services or charges has the legal right to file written objections under the Authorities Act within 45 days of the hearing, which would technically be Sunday, November 12th. However, that rolls to Monday, November 13th. Written objections must be made to your municipality in which you live. Do not send it to MESA, please send it to your municipality. However, the Authorities Act allows the authority to move forward after the 45-day time period unless either 33% of the owners of properties benefited object, or the owners of property whose property valuation of the assessed values used for tax purposes represents 33% of the total property valuation of the area served would object. MESA was formed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining a sustainable and economically feasible ambulance service to provide reliable and consistent response times to those in need within the boundaries of the municipalities that form MESA. MESA was formed to maintain and staff a ready ambulance service to provide basic and advanced life support services to the residents, workers, and visitors within Kenoi, East Donegal, Elizabeth, Mount Joy, and West Donegal townships, and the boroughs of Elizabethtown and Marietta. The Authorities Act requires certain notices to be given to the public prior to the fee hearing. An individual notice must be mailed to each property owner and to each commercial lessee within the area to be served. The individual notices were mailed on or around August 20th, 2023, and in addition, public notice must be advertised in a newspaper of general circulation at least 10 days prior to the hearing. The advertisement appeared in LNP on Thursday, September 14th, 2023. Accordingly, MESA has complied with the notice requirements of the Authorities Act. I'd like to provide some ground rules for this evening's hearing. MESA has a stenographer present this evening to create a record of the hearing. She is seated in the first row. We are also making a video of this proceeding. Please form a line behind the microphones to the right and to the left, and before you speak, please provide your name, your address, and the municipality in which you reside for the record. Please try to keep your statements to 3 minutes to allow everyone who wants to speak the opportunity to do so. Everyone shall be given the opportunity to speak at least one time, and anyone wishing to add a second round of comments is asked to wait until everyone wanting to speak has had the opportunity to do so before you approach the microphone for a second time. If you agree with what someone else has said, please feel free to let us know that. And if you want to add anything additional or new to the comments, please do so. The hearing is being transcribed, so please do not interrupt the person at the microphone or have side conversations because it makes it difficult for a stenographer to hear. It will allow her to make an accurate and full transcript of the proceedings. Please be cordial and respectful of everyone in attendance and everyone who chooses to speak. As indicated, this public hearing is for the purpose of receiving public comment on the proposed services to be provided by MESA and the method of assessment of fees for such services. It is not a deposition of MESA or a time to ask questions of the members of the MESA board. MESA will keep track of any of the questions that are asked and will attempt to put together a response to the various questions to be posted on the MESA website following the hearing and prior to the expiration of the objection period. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Deb for tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Dave, and I should have clicked this forward. There is the agenda. So we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. And as Dave said, if you do have questions, we will consolidate those. You know, a question asked this way, a question asked this way. If they're the same question, we'll consolidate those and put them out on the MESA website. So what is the Municipal Emergency Services Authority of Lancaster County? So as it says, is municipal-led administrative services authority, and it was created with the Authorities Act in Pennsylvania. And it is created to fund, manage, and provide EMS services for the municipalities represented here. And we believe this is a local solution to our local EMS crisis. So the municipalities, as I introduced everyone, there is a representative of each one of those municipalities here today. So what is the EMS crisis? EMS agencies, not just here, but across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, are struggling. And it was kind of apropos, as a township supervisor, we get something called the Township News, and there's a 10-page article in the Township News about the EMS crisis in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. If anybody wanted a copy of that, make sure you get a copy as well. So why are they struggling? Funding shortfalls, soaring costs. As we know, everybody's paying more for things. Staffing challenges, EMS used to be all volunteers. Well, volunteerism has definitely gone down in our society today. And so, yes, Northwest EMS has a few volunteers, but most are paid. So, a local example, Northwest EMS. They received the 2020 name, they were named the EMS Agency of the Year in 2020 by the Pennsylvania Emergency Health Services Council. They had a 97% response rate last year, with an average response time of 8.52 minutes. That's exemplary. So we are used to having a quality EMS provider, and that is the goal of MESA, to continue with that quality service. But they are facing insolvency. Insurance reimbursement doesn't cover the full cost of 911. It doesn't cover the cost of the call. It doesn't cover the readiness for service. And we all know the insurance companies are very powerful. So to get fully reimbursed isn't happening. Northwest EMS also offered membership. Less than 50% of residents contributed to the memberships. And then with the increasing cost of the equipment, fuel, training, benefits, we're all facing that every day. So the municipalities needed, as it says, a bold long-term solution. Municipalities are required by law, by state law, to provide EMS. And this is the way that we felt was the most viable. So a committee was formed to look at the feasibility of solutions back in 2021. Northwest EMS held quarterly meetings for years before that with the municipalities. So municipalities were aware that there was an issue, but a core group of people got together and a committee was formed to look into how to best move forward, and they came up with the authority model. So public hearings were held over several months, and if you are interested in the exact timeline of all that, that is on our website. So the municipalities incorporated MESA in February of 2023. The Commonwealth approved the MESA incorporation within 24 hours of the application. They're very aware that this is a problem in the Commonwealth. So the new community model is that it's locally and publicly owned and managed. It's controlled by the local municipalities, not by hospital systems. Most hospital ambulance systems or emergency systems are primarily dedicated to transports, not emergencies. So Northwest EMS, and as MESA will be, is dedicated to 911 emergency service with that 24/7 readiness. And we looked at how is this equitable and sustainable, and how can we make sure that's fair to all. So there is the full benefits for one mandatory fee, and I'll show you the benefits here on the next slide. We do hold public meetings. They're the first and third Wednesday of each month at the E-Town Borough Municipal Office. They're the first and third at this point because we have a lot to do. Maybe at some point it'll cut down to once a month. That is a public meeting. You are all welcome to attend. So the community, via voting for your supervisors, voting for your council members, has a voice in this process. So here are the benefits for all residents of the member municipalities. We have 24/7 readiness to answer the call. There are no residual bills for 911 emergency service if the insurance pays. if you do not have insurance or your entire payment goes towards your deductible, it will be 50% off on that ambulance service. All benefits provided for a single annual fee. And these are the same benefits that if you are a current Northwest EMS subscriber that you get now. Those same benefits will continue. So will I have to pay an annual fee if I have insurance? Simply yes. Insurance reimbursements only occur on a per-call basis and only cover about roughly half of the total cost of the service. Again, we know how powerful the insurance companies are and the lobbyists for them. And quite honestly, they're in the driver's seat on this. So insurance does not cover the cost of readiness for service. Yes, you can go to the doctor's office, your insurance covers, maybe you have a copay, whatever, but they can schedule their appointments. I know I go to the doctor's and there's 5 people scheduled within 15 minutes to see that same doctor. You don't schedule your heart attacks. You don't schedule your broken legs, your car or chainsaw accidents. If you did, it'd be easier to staff EMS. So the mandatory annual fee will fund the balance of the operational expenses, ensuring that readiness for service and fiscal stability that is currently not happening. Northwest EMS has, as I said, been running a deficit. Will MESA replace Northwest EMS? Yes. MESA will be the new entity providing EMS services to the member municipalities. And again, if you are currently a member of Northwest EMS, a subscriber to their membership, your benefits will continue. And your benefits will continue even up through MESA's first billing. So I know there's a lag time of October or November till when we start the fee. That membership will cover that spans. So we'll still have the same outstanding people that deliver the same outstanding service that we are all used to receiving from Northwest EMS. So again, it says new entity, new name, same Northwest EMS people and services. So how would this work? Again, we have a board of representatives from each founding municipality, and they are appointed by the municipality. So as a public entity, board meetings are advertised and open to the public, and as I mentioned, that is the first and third Wednesday of each month. So instead of generating the revenue through those voluntary contributions and subscriptions that you currently do to Northwest EMS, MESA will charge a mandatory annual fee to property owners. And insurance reimbursement still remains part of the revenue model. We're not saying insurance isn't covering anything. And we'll have that down here a little further. So it's in no way eliminating the insurance reimbursements from the budget. Now, this fee that we're talking about here, we can't just willy-nilly increase that whenever we want. According to the Authorities Act, the fee cannot increase more than the lesser of the current consumer price index or 5%, the lesser of the two without a hearing. And I think I looked up the CPI today and it's at 3.7, I believe. So if our current fee was today and we wanted to adjust it, the most we could adjust it is 3.7 without having another hearing. So I'm going to invite Justin Risser up from Kenoi Township, and he's going to go through the budget.
Okay, so I'm tasked with helping you guys understand how we came up with the numbers for the budget and the fee. One thing I want you guys all to be aware of is that the budget is $5.6 million, okay? And so when we set out to classify what this fee was going to be, we wanted to look at the actual numbers. We wanted to look at the calls and where the calls went. We worked with a local CPA firm, and we worked with historical data, okay? So we didn't presume anything. Everything was done based upon how calls were classified. Revenue includes, in this budget, insurance reimbursements and annual fees from property owners, businesses, organizations, and institutions in the 7-member municipalities. When I turn to the next slide, you'll see that $2.4 million is going to come from fees. And this money will cover the readiness of service. So we have insurance up there as a potential revenue, or as a guaranteed revenue. And then you'll notice that 73% of the expense, and I'll go to the next slide, is personnel, just payroll, with another 9% being benefits. That's 82% of our budget is just taking care of our employees. I wanted to drive that point home. That's where our money is going. The starting pay at Northwest EMS since COVID has jumped up, and rightfully so. These people deserve what they're getting paid. And I shouldn't say that in the light that we think that they are being paid astronomically. They are still very low pay in comparison to other jobs in the area. So if you look at the pie graph, you'll see the insurance revenue is 56%, others 2%. The fees will be 42% of our budget. Within the expenses, I said 73% was payroll, 9% was benefits, and then we have a lot of the smaller ones like insurance and medical supplies, office, billing fees, training, stuff like that. 82% is taking care of our employees. So when we actually looked and we classified the calls, we did a broad stroke analysis, and then we brought it back to key statistical categories. One thing that we noticed was when you call 911, 73% of the time it happens when you're at home. So we have residential occupancies as a classification. Another key place that it happens is while you're at work. So we have commercial and business. We have institutional or educational. They would cover your schools. They would also cover nursing homes. We have public assembly, which would be like your churches or like your banquet halls. And then we have a special municipal and other, and this was basically to cover the auto accidents and some of the other, I would say, residual calls, like at a park or at a place that's not covered already. So we have the classifications, and then we looked at the percent of the calls. And like I said, 74% of the time, it was at home. Almost 8.9% was at work. 4.3% was having to do with acute care nursing beds. Only 0.4% was at an event, venue, or occupancy. And almost 5% were auto accidents. Assisted living residents were 6.3%. You can see where the calls were being generated. So then we went back to our 2.4 million, and we just simply did a math calculation. If 74% of the calls occurred at home, we need 74% of that revenue, that 2.4, to come from those calls. And as we fill this table in, you'll see that the math holds out. That comes out to $1.72 million. If 8.84% happened at work, 8.84% of the 2.4 million needs to come from the businesses. And we base that on a full-time equivalent. Okay, so if you have 2 part-time employees that work 20 hours a week, you have 1 full-time equivalent. And so as we fill this graph, no, I went the wrong way. Oh, no, okay. Here's just a pie graph of what we've already gone over. we start looking at how many billable units. Okay, so we found that at home it happens 74% of the time, and that we need to generate 1.72 million with that. We then have data as municipal governments that we looked at how many homes we have in our 7 municipalities. We have 20,247. How many businesses we have? How many how many miles of roadway we have? And then from there, it told us what the fee per unit was going to be. And so most of you are here because you're interested in the fee per housing unit. And that came out to $85. On the full-time worker equivalent, if you're an employer, it's $10 per employee. I'm a farmer, I have employees. I will be paying for my employees, and I will also be paying for my family. I will be double billed. That's just the nature of the beast, but I'm covering my employees and I'm covering my family in the home. So I'm covering everything, okay? The municipalities are going to be tasked with covering the auto accidents because nobody here owns the roads. The roads are owned by the municipality or the state. And since we can't bill the state, nobody's really tried, but nobody's ever going to get paid by the state. The municipalities are going to say, we are going to cover the roads. And so the municipalities are going to chip in to balance the budget per mile of roadway, and that's $290. Now, from your municipality standpoint, we've already been given to Northwest EMS. We've been given contributions. So for most of us, actually almost all of us, this is not going to be any additional line item to our budget. We're just taking that and we just have a new value because it's based upon our road miles. And all 7 of us are different. Kenoi, we have almost 50 miles of roadway, whereas boroughs are more concentrated with their roads. They don't have as much. We were going after, but they don't have as many auto accidents usually because they don't have as many miles of roadways. So the task of calculating this fee was to make it true, to make it equitable. And I think we nailed it because the numbers come out where we thought they should be. We wanted to keep the homeowner very close to what a subscription was. And when we did the classification, we felt good about it, that the cost was going to be about the same as being a member of Northwest EMS. And like Deb said, if you pay your fee, you have the same benefits. So if you get a hospital transport for $1,500 and your insurance pays $500, the $1,000 is forgiven, okay? If you don't have insurance, that $1,000 is 50% reduced, okay? So the residential fee is $85, or about $7 a month. For businesses, it's $10 per full-time equivalent. I give you some examples up there. To put it in perspective, it's less than 2 gallons of gas. It's less than 1.5 gallons of milk or 2 boxes of cereal, a couple lottery tickets. How valuable is an ambulance to be there when you want it? If you need it now, you're probably going to say, I would pay $2,000 to have it right now. I would pay $10,000 to have it right now. If you use it once in 10 years and you pay $850, is $850 for 10 years of coverage worth it? I would argue it would be. Go to my next slide here. Okay. So like Deb says, and like our solicitor David Jones says, the fee is authorized under the Municipality Authorities Act. We incorporated it under the Administrative Services. So we have billable hours for calls, but we have hours that we can't really truly bill for because we have people that are just ready. MESA was formed under the Authorities Act back in February of 2023. And when we applied, we actually got the stamp of approval in less than 24 hours. So what's next? So Northwest will remain Northwest until MESA takes over. And MESA plans to take over in early 2024. Like Deb said, if you were a member in 2023, you will remain a member until the fees are billed and collected. If you have any questions that you ask here tonight that you would like to know the answers to, we invite you to check out our webpage. We will have the answers to those questions within 15 days. We have somebody that is taking a list of all the questions, and we're gonna hear repeated themes. We're positive of that, but we're gonna have answers to those questions. I hope, having gone through this presentation, that how we came up with $85 makes sense, and that if you came here not knowing how it was calculated and how EMS runs, that you might have a little bit more information. At this point, I will turn it back over to our solicitor to lead us into the public comment period, and he will go over the ground rules once again. Thank you.
So I'm gonna shorten those ground rules. Again, please state your full name, your street address, and the municipality of your residence, and please try to adhere to 3 minutes as a courtesy to others who wish to comment. If you would, please come forward to either one of the microphones and please make your comment. Ms. Hanold.
Gee, I didn't even have to give my name and address. What is this? Bridie Hanold, 9 North River Street. Bridie Hanold, 9 North River Street. Maytown, that's in East Donegal Township. A couple things. This authority is formed for emergency medical services, and that's what you are. You are a medical provider. There's certainly nothing wrong with an authority merging together. That happens. You want to become a little bit bigger, maybe cut down on some administrative costs. There are other EMS authorities in the state of Pennsylvania. No other one charges a mandated fee. You would be the only one to do such a thing. But I also want to point out that your struggles are what every other medical provider faces, whether they're in Pennsylvania or elsewhere. Every other medical provider accepts the reimbursement rate from insurance companies if they participate. You're not the only one that takes a cut on it. I worked for a medical provider. It's an unfortunate part of it, but there's also a flip side to it. Until the Affordable Care Act, emergency medical services were not a covered procedure allowed by your insurance company. And that federal law opened it up and mandated that EMS services be a covered procedure on, this is talking about your private health insurance. So you've made gains by collecting that insurance money if health insurance, private health insurance is billed. Also, if you have a state or a federal insurance program, such as Medicaid or Medicare, it is now covered. Furthermore, you might have, Pennsylvania is a no-fault state for auto insurance. If you are injured in an auto accident, your fault or not, your auto insurance will pay 100% of your medical costs. If you're an employer who is mandated to provide workman's comp insurance to their employees, and your employees are injured at your work, your workman's comp insurance will cover those medical services that have to be provided to your employee who was injured. So I really have a problem with a mandated fee imposed on me or anybody else when there's laws that mandate those services actually be covered by insurance companies. If you contract with those insurance companies, you're mandated to accept their reimbursement. You don't have to contract with them, but if you do, that is your obligation. That's your contract with them. Also, this is a service that you are charging for that someone might not ever use. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. If there's a sewer authority in East Donegal Township, but you're not hooked up to the sewer authority because you're using septic, you're not paying a sewer bill because you're not using that service. You are charging someone for a service they may never use. They might, but they might not too. I don't believe you can charge for a service without actually getting it. Thank you.
Okay, sir?
Urban Sailor, 222 Colebrook Road, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, West Donegal Township.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, sir? Thank you.
Urban Sailor, 222 Colebrook Road, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, 17022, West Donegal Township.
Okay.
And I think what you people have done with the figures there, I think you did a great job. And when I did my subscription for the year, I always paid that, plus I always donated $100 or $200 more because I know we need you people, the emergency people. And I just think you are doing a great job. I want to thank you for it.
Thank you, Mr. Saylor. Ma'am.
My name is Pat Shank, 1925 Creek Road, Manheim, PA, Mountjoy Township. I just think it's a good idea what you're doing. I believe the fire companies do it already. I'm just not understanding whether we're getting a bill in the mail or whether it's going to be on our taxes. It sounded like it was going to be on our taxes. No, okay.
It would be a separate fee bill each year. It would
Okay.
come from the authority versus your tax collector.
Okay. And what about people that are renting? How do they pay anything? We property owners pay, like we do with the fire department, on our taxes. But what about all the renters that are in apartments?
It's no different than your real estate taxes. That tax bill would go to the property owner, and it would be up to the property owner to determine how, as a landlord, they would collect that or recoup that fee.
Okay. And my understanding is that I already paid a membership fee, and I don't have to pay again at the end of the year because MESA will take over in a couple months.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. My name is Arnold John Kappen. I'm 29 Arch. Can you boost this mic? Thank you. My name is Arnold John Kappen. I'm from 29 Arch Street, E-Town. I come to object at a mandatory fee. You're choosing to tax particular persons to provide a service for every person, even if I don't use the service. Mandatory fees, in principle, are choosing what service I get to partake of. Call it what it is. Fee, it's a tax. You're reaching into my pocket and choosing what I'm going to do with that money at a time when already costs of living have gone so ridiculously crazy that it makes it difficult for young people especially to even consider purchasing a home. I happen to be a property owner. I happen to get in the game a little bit early compared to... Sure. I happen to have gotten into the game of owning a house a little bit earlier than most of my peers, but most of my peers don't believe they'll ever be able to own a home because of the cost of living right now. And we're adding a mandatory fee to the people who are already at that stage. It doesn't make any sense. It's also not equitable in that you're not charging a head tax, as can be done under Pennsylvania law. You're charging property owners. So there's a ton of people for whom those fees are obfuscated within their rental costs, whereas the rest of us get to see the direct charge billed to us directly. And it doesn't seem right. If less than 50% of people subscribe to the EMS services, it would seem to me that, being a vote of the populace living here, by their wallet, would indicate that it's not something they place as high in importance on as the people who happen to be in the decision-making position right now in the board. I think you should take that into careful consideration. Mandatorily taking money from people by fiat, it doesn't go well in the long term. And it's going to decrease volunteer contribution to an organization if they feel like it's already being paid for, I don't have to contribute. Volunteerism dies when charitable action is not allowed to happen and be rewarded accordingly. Happens all the time, so something to consider.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
My name's Candy Prescott, Blanchflower. I live at 147 Hillcrest Lane, West Donegal Township. I've asked this question a million times. I even typed it into the Northwest website under the authority. Currently, right now, Northwest is being called by the hospitals if the patient lives on Masonic Home Village property. Is that going to continue, or is that going to open up to the rest of us that should also be deserving to that service, to be returned to our homes?
I'm not sure we understand the question, ma'am.
So transports.
Okay, so we are not going to do transports, is that correct?
So the person who utilizes and pays for this mandatory fee, if they're at home and or if they're at the hospital and they're handicapped, they're going to have to contract with another organization where they're not going to get the 50% off?
That's yet to be determined. The discount, as highlighted in the slide, only pertains to 911 emergency services.
We have not determined what services we would provide beyond the emergency services at this point in time.
But if you choose not to, that also includes Masonic Home Village property people will no longer be
Correct. It would
transported
be-
as well.
yeah, it would be
That are
across the board.
currently being
Yes.
transported at this time. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ilana Huber. I'm at 315 North Mount Joy Street in Elizabethtown. My question is, do you have a plan if people defunct on payments at this point?
Well, under Authorities Act, there are several legal mechanisms to collect those taxes, that fee. We're exploring those all at this point in time and have to determine which one we would avail ourselves of.
Okay, and my second question is, if there's somebody who does not pay the fee, does this mean an ambulance doesn't come to their home?
No.
Because I know in other fee-for-service emergency services in the country, this has occurred.
That has never been discussed, and my understanding is that that would not be a part of our program.
I think it looks like a few things still need to be worked on.
Name?
Hi, Anita Mathias, 5958 Bosler Road, E-Town, in West Donegal Township. I just want to understand that MESA would be billing the insurance companies for the,
If services are received for emergency services, they would issue a bill to your insurer, yes.
okay. All right, just wanted to clarify that because I didn't see anything about that in any of the writing or anything. So just wanted to clarify who was going to be responsible for billing the insurance companies. And you have personnel to accommodate that then, I assume?
We do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sir?
David Swigert, 1130 East College Avenue, Mountjoy Township. I support MESA, and just my comments to those that are concerned of paying for something you'll never use. There's many examples of property owners paying taxes for services never used. The biggest example probably locally is a school tax. You can pay a school tax on a property, and whether you own it, and may never have anybody in school, or this property is just apartments, leased property sold. But it's another example where you pay taxes for something you never use. Another example, which I've used this one many times, that we all pay federal, state, local taxes for roads we're never going to drive on. But we do, and we don't have any choice. But so if you need emergency services, you know, all of us hope we never need it. Well, 11 years ago, they saved my life, and once you've had that happen to you once, you appreciate it more, the value of it. But my first comment is those that, we pay for a lot of things that we're never going to use. And the school tax, the roads are just one example. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, my name is Paul Blanchard, 147 Hillcrest Lane, West Donegal Township. My question is, under the current 911 system, they use the 8-mile rule. So what happens if I'm paying for your service, which I'm not necessarily opposed to doing, but you're tied up? You get the closest ambulance, and it may not be a MESA truck. How does that affect
That's
what
correct.
I'm paying for?
Yeah, that's correct, and there would still be mutual aid agreements that are being worked out with surrounding communities because they have needs as well. So we would have to work that out, and we're currently exploring those agreements at the present time.
So my bill would be, I'd get a bill from them, and that's no assistance from, even though I'm paying for you, there would be
No, the idea would be is they would recognize the call the same way they would for their subscription. So we would provide the service and accept what they get, and vice versa.
Okay, all right, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else before Ms. Hanold comes up for a second time? Ma'am?
278 Westview Drive, Elizabethtown, West Donegal Township. I'm a little bit not certain, based upon what we saw in the information sent to us and on the slides, concerning the methodology that was used to arrive at the projected estimate for 2024.
Okay.
I'm a little bit confused by what was done or not done. And in regard, I'm not sure and don't see anything that relates to projections. I mean, you have a certain number of billing units. You based it on 2022, according to what's here. And that concerns me a little bit regarding, the fees, because if your projections are based upon what was, that's not what's going to happen in 2024 and 2025. So I'm just wondering if there might be some ways in which you could address that.
I think the fair way to say it would be is we use similar methodologies that what Northwest EMS would have used to project their budget for the next year. So we look at historical trends and cost increases associated with those trends, and then projected them forward for the next year using similar patterns. You certainly can't, if the price of gas goes up 30% next year, there's no way to crystal ball that. But I think we've used similar methodologies to what Northwest has employed in the past and added what we believe was appropriate moving forward.
Well, that's not reflected in what you've provided to people.
We understand that. We're trying to keep it as quick and neat as possible.
Well, having more disclosure that way could be very helpful. The other thing that concerns me in lieu of that is that if you have a cap on what you can increase, and, based upon what we heard before, 3.21, whatever? 7, okay, all right, would be a maximum amount, just using that as an example. If your costs really did go up because of buildings and other things going on in the communities, then you would still be in the same position you're in today. So, thank you.
Ma'am, if we could just give everyone else a first chance.
I just want to say, the MESA website, I didn't see it on the papers we got. Could you put that up there before we leave tonight?
We can certainly provide that. I'm sorry, it's on the last slide. Okay, hold on. Ma'am, do you have something on this side?
There is a QR code.
Yes, my name is Mim Donor, and I live at 344 Colebrook Road, Mount Joy, and I'm in East Donegal Township. First of all, I want to say thank you very, very much to the EMS people who have been giving of their time and services. We have used that quite often in the last year. My husband was very ill, so I'm very, very thankful for that, and I just want to say thank you so much. I do have a concern, though. You talked about the homeowners being able to pass the cost on to their renters, and that's true. But what happens to the homeowner that is just a homeowner and is not providing a home for renters? I guess my question I have is, this cost that we have, why isn't that divvied out and divided amongst every address instead of just the homeowners?
Well, it actually is divvied up by every homeowner, so we have 20,000 some odd homes, so every home is getting that charge for the $35, or for the $85, and then we have the businesses that are getting that, and the Authorities Act kind of provides us with a framework with how we have to do that. And then we took some of that cost and put it on the municipalities because we have travelers who are injured coming through the municipality, and they're covered as well. So we tried to spread it out as best we could to cover everyone. But yes, again, I think to answer your question, every home will get a bill in which someone resides.
But I'm talking about every home, whether you're an owner or a renter, every mailbox,
Well, the
whether.
the landlord of a renter will get a bill.
But my question is, why is that? Because the homeowners are charged spring tax, fall tax, now this bill, and it just seems like the homeowners are getting hit hard. And if you're a person that has renters, you can pass that on. If you're not, then you have to provide the income for that.
But the person who's living in the property is getting the service, so someone has to pay for it. So if you're there by virtue of a lease, or you live there because you own the home, you're getting the same, the owner of the property is getting the same bill.
You're not seeing it the way I'm at. Yeah. I
Okay.
don't know how else to ask it. It just seems like everybody should, every single person should get that. So it's divided out evenly. So.
Yeah, and actually, the gentleman that made the statement that it's per capita you can do, under the Authorities Act, you can't. You have to direct it to properties that are benefited.
What is the service, what does it say that you can't do that?
It says that you can only charge the owners of properties who are benefited or commercial lessees. Those are the two categories of people. So that's how we're spreading it.
I guess, yeah, I don't have more to say. That's, my concern.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. Andrew Pickett, 132 East Harrisburg Avenue, Elizabethtown, which is West Donegal Township. First off, I want to thank you all for taking the proactive step and pursuing the municipal authority. I think that this is the right thing to do. I think this is the way to build better, sustainable EMS systems in the Commonwealth. And I think more municipalities are going to have to start moving down this route in areas where you don't have a municipally operated and taxed EMS service. So I just want to commend you all and certainly our colleagues from Northwest EMS for putting this together. I do know that the current Northwest EMS and the authority's service territory has been in flux recently. And I happen to live in that sort of weird part of West Donegal Township in Reams, where at least previously Northwest EMS was the ALS first due, and Penn State Lifeline being the BLS first due agency. And I was just curious if that sort of weird spot on the map is still going to exist under the authority, and what that might mean in the future as different EMS services negotiate their service areas and who is primary coverage for what levels of service in parts of the community.
So as of August 7th, all of Mountjoy Township as of August 7th, all of West Donegal Township and Mountjoy Township, all BLS coverage by Northwest EMS. ALS is still by ever the closest unit.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Ma'am?
Donna Coble, 570 Castle Road, Mountjoy Township. What do you do with, people don't pay their taxes, period, property tax? What if you have households that never send you a check? How are you going to collect that? and
Again,
what's going to be taken?
similar to taxes, we can file municipal lien against the property to collect that bill and force a sale on that property if we need to.
For $85?
We can, yes.
And my question is, I believe the donation for a household was $65. Why didn't you start with that? Because you know every year you're going to put this cost up, the same as school taxes, same as property taxes, just like our spring taxes. They charge a fire municipal tax. That started out low. Now it's half. Say you pay $1,000, 500 of that goes to Mountjoy Township, and the other 500 is your property tax. What's going to come with this? Plus, my other question, what if you own a property and nobody's living in it because you don't rent it, it's not rentable? Do you, just because you have a mailbox there or an address, are you going to pay for that?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Yes, if it's inhabitable, you would get a bill. I think we started with a reasonable estimate that we believed would be for the next year and backed the number as best we could. So we came up with 85 to keep it as affordable as possible. From that extent, you're right, taxes sometimes go up, fees sometimes go up, but the cost of
They
providing
go up
those-
every year.
and it's no less expensive to provide those same services on a year-to-year basis. And we can't hire people and pay insurance and buy gas unless we pay the going rate. And if that going rate goes up, we have to cover those costs.
So was I correct that you pay somebody to charge the insurances? Why can't, like, say it was me, why can't I turn that into my own insurance? It would save you paying a person to do that. I mean, I'm trying to understand.
Have you ever worked with insurance companies and tried to bill them? And I'm saying this in all seriousness. My wife is a chiropractor, and she has 2 people that she employs to bill insurance companies, and they know their job, and they get to run around every single day and play heck trying to get their money. So we're hoping to have someone that consolidates those services, provides them an efficient method and manner, and they will get those collections as quickly and as efficiently as possible. You are certainly able to turn in your own, if you want to pay us directly and turn it into your insurance company, we'd actually probably prefer that, right? Not many people do that, to be honest.
So back to if you have a property and nobody's living in it, do we have to pay that?
Yes. It's no different than
There's nobody in it.
if you have trash service.
No,
If you have
we
mandatory
don't.
trash service in a municipality, a lot of municipalities will have you pay that whether someone's living there or not, because it's too hard to determine if someone is actually living there or not.
It's unlivable property.
Is it condemned by the?
They lowered our taxes because they said, is somebody living in this,
Well,
when they seen the pictures, and we said no.
If
They
it
said,
is-
well, it should be condemned.
Okay, if the taxing body says that it's not taxable, then yes, we would probably waive that fee for that property.
Because nobody's going to be living in it. So that means we're going to get billed twice or 3 times?
Again, I don't know your specific situation, but it sounds like if you own a property that's condemned and the tax assessment office has determined that there's zero value to it, we will not issue a bill.
But as long as it's not deemed condemned, we got to pay it.
Yes, some people keep their houses in different shapes of maintenance and upkeep than others, so we pretty much send it out across the board. Any other first-timers? There we go.
Gary Swartz, 236 Colebrook Road, Elizabethtown, West Donegal Township. Couple of things. This is the first organization I've ever heard of in the United States that requires people to be a member. That's against the Constitution. No law, no other state, even as California, as dumb as they are, and the laws that they put in their books does not require people to be a member of any organization, let alone paying for it. Second of all, this constitutes a contract if somebody does become a member. Are you prepared to honor your end of the contract? That means you're not going to be able to raise the fees, decide, oh, in the middle of the cycle, we're not getting enough money, we're going to raise the fees. And don't care. We're just able to do that because we formed an authority. You know, last time I checked in the state of Pennsylvania and in the United States, only the legislature has the power to tax. Municipalities have to go through the legislature to get permission from the state. And as was pointed out to me, somebody said, oh, we formed an authority. The water authority has to go through the PUC to raise their rates, change the way they tow the water. Anything they do, they need to go through the Public Utility Commission to get permission.
Let me correct a couple
Where's
of
the
your
position here?
misconceptions here. One is, this is not a membership organization, it's an authority. The authority is permitted by the legislature and the Municipalities Authorities Act to create and charge those fees,
I'd
not a
like to see
tax.
the documents on that, because I've
Sure,
asked for it. and I
Section
haven't gotten them.
5607 of the Municipalities Authorities Act.
I mean, I've asked my legislature to provide them. They can't find them.
Okay, well, it's Section 5607 Municipalities Authorities Act.
Because forcing anybody to pay a fee or anything is a form of tax.
Well, we can argue that all day on
I
a legal
mean,
basis.
if you go
but
by
the-
that saying, I form an organization and therefore I'm allowed to charge, I have a business, I can go to every other business out there and say, I'm gonna charge you $100 a year because you're able to call me. And I can get away with that.
Well,
Legally, I can't. I wouldn't do it. Morally, I wouldn't do it.
okay.
But that's the way I see it. You're preparing change. This isn't a problem that came up in the last 2 years. This has been an ongoing problem for over 50 years with the ambulances. And I asked one question, and I want everybody to think about this. Why is it that the municipalities, the state government, can fund fire departments that run maybe one call a month? Give them thousands, $100,000 a year to do with it what they want, and you'd be surprised what they're doing with it. And yet they can't fund an ambulance for the good of the public. Seems a little funny to me that, oh, we can't fund an ambulance, which is vital to every citizen here, but we can fund a fire department, and their trucks are $400,000 a year. You're talking millions a year per one department, and yet they can shell out the money for it. At one time, the ambulances in this area were all part of the fire departments, and they broke off. And you have to ask why. Why did that happen? I don't know the answer to that. I know I was a member of an ambulance many years ago, and I dropped out. I quit running with it because I didn't like the politics.
Well, I think to your point, had municipalities started funding ambulances to the same level they did fire departments, we might not be in this position. So I agree with you there.
I mean, what's wrong with that approach?
The municipalities, for whatever reason, simply don't
I
do
think,
that.
yeah,
And that's a way that the fee would be spread by tax. It would
Yeah.
be spread per property, and you would incur the cost that way. So it's kind of six of one,
Same
half
as we
dozen
do
the
with
other.
the fire department or
Correct.
anything else. But if it's taxed, the legislature votes on that, not just a few people sitting up here at this table that may or may not have a profit interest in it. I don't know.
Well, again, you need to review the Municipalities Authorities Act. It does give us the authority.
I'm going to
do
pick
that.
up a copy of that from you today
Okay.
because I've asked for it several times and nobody said, well, they don't even know what it is.
Wow.
So either the people I'm talking to that work for the state tell me they don't know what it is. I have to question where it comes from. But I still question why you can fund a fire department and watch them drive the vehicles all over the state for parties, but you can't fund an ambulance to protect the people? The ambulance, to me, would have been priority.
We appreciate that, sir. One other comment very quickly. The PUC does not regulate authority fees for sewer or water. It only regulates public utilities who are not an authority.
Actually, every water authority in the state of Pennsylvania has to get permission to raise their rates, change anything from the Public Utilities Commission.
Okay, sir.
They also must get permission from the Environmental Protection Board in the of the federal government. If they're gonna trench and do anything else, that's all gotta be taken into consideration.
Okay.
So you say, oh, they don't have their fees, they can't run. Even PP&L cannot change their rates for electricity without getting permission from the Public Utilities Commission.
And the only point is the PP&L is a public utility. It is not
It's
a
actually a
municipal.
privately owned company.
It's not a municipal authority as regulated by the PUC.
PP&L and utility companies are all publicly owned
Correct.
on Wall Street companies.
Yep, understood.
Okay, it's a larger company than we realize, but they still got to get permission in the state of Pennsylvania to raise their rates.
PP&L and the municipal authority is a different animal.
Oh, yeah, they're
Legally.
different, but they all have to get permission. You don't. How's that, how'd you manage that?
The Municipalities Authorities Act. If you look it up on the internet,
I
you
have.
will find it.
Seems I can't find it.
Okay, I'll give you the
Same as I
citation.
can't find your website, it refers me to E-Town Borough.
Sir, we're gonna move on to the next speaker. Sir.
Good evening. My name's Robert A. Reisdorf, and I'm at 206 Colebrook Road in Elizabethtown. First thing I want to say is I want to say thank you to this group of people putting together this MESA. If you look at the call volume of the ambulance service on the active incidents with Lancaster County-wide communications, the ambulance service is a very busy service in this county. If you look at that compared to the fire departments, they are much, much more active and busier than the fire departments. So I thank you for putting this together and starting this out. This is a good thing. For me, it's 85 hours. 85 hours you spend very quickly somewhere, and 85 hours isn't much to me regarding the kind of service that I'll get from it. The other thing I want to say is I'm glad to see that this MESA has a board of directors that is made up of the municipalities, not board of directors made up of a fire department that appoint directors that they desire to be on the board of directors for their own personal interests. I'm glad it's done by the municipalities. The municipalities that are elected officials will be the directors of this organization. That's the way it should be, and I applaud you for that. The next thing I want to say is I have here in my hand the Township Supervisor's Handbook, which I read in very big detail. And you have the authority to do this, and that's what you should do, and I agree with you. The one thing I do want to ask you about is that we have this Lancaster County tax collection that we pay in West Donegal Township, which is $52. And by law, it says at least 25% of the revenues from the local service tax must be used for the emergency services purposes, including fire, police, ambulance, and emergency response. So this $52 that we pay, obviously we're going to be paying this. What are we going to do with that $52? So that's a question I have for you. The other thing that I want to say, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've been a very strong supporter of this. I'm looking at the West Donegal Township's Fire, Rescue, and EMS Fund, the 2023 budget. And it always shocked me that the Northwest EMS amount of money they get from West Donegal Township is sizably, tremendously lower from West Donegal Township to the EMS than it is to the fire departments. knowing that the ambulance services are much more busier than the fire departments. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand the fire departments have large equipment and so forth and so on. But I always did think, looking at this, that it needed to be equalized better and allocated better. So I'm glad this is happening, this MESA, because this gets Northwest Ambulance Association on track regarding funding and support, and I'm in favor of it. And I like the way you have it set up. So I applaud you for that. The last thing I just want to say is that I stood here and I listened to some people that made some questions that you were not certain about. And all I want to say to you as the supervisors and the borough council members is to make sure you cross your T's and you dot your I's on everything associated with this municipality's services, so that we do not have problems down the road regarding, oh, that was an oversight, we didn't see that coming, yada, yada, yada. That wasn't the way it should have been. Make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's, and make sure that everything is completely appropriate and logical so that it works for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir?
Yes, Jim Weibel, 213 Dogwood Drive, West Donegal. I'd like to say that I am fully in support of this. I have been in emergency services, various roles throughout the state, from Western Pennsylvania out to here, recently serving as president and board member of several fire departments, one across the river. I can say I was faced with the very issues that you and the folks in the back there have been faced with, finding the funding, the membership, et cetera. I can tell you that the options out there that have been explored and looked at, that I'm sure you all looked at, are not. This is the best solution, the most fair, the way you have done your homework there to spread the costs. I commend you for that. I can tell you there's a few comments. Volunteerism is dead, so unfortunately these roles are needed to happen. So I'm just wanted to wrap up and say thank you. As someone that has been in your shoes and the shoes in the back, this is an excellent plan, and I applaud you all and appreciate it. Thank you.
So, any other first-time speakers, would they like to get up? We'll give you opportunity. And I'm sorry, if anyone has difficulty walking to the front, please let us know. We have a mobile microphone that we can bring back to you. Okay, sir.
My name is Matthew Huber. I'm on 315 North Mountjoy Street here in Elizabethtown. My wife spoke earlier. I do agree with what you're doing, but since we're all going to be involved in paying into this, I was wondering how transparent you were going to be down the road on at least an annual basis of monies coming in and where it's going, because I pay my taxes, but I'm not always sure where they're going.
So let me address it this way. As a municipal authority, we are subject to all the transparency laws that a municipality is subject to. We will have public meetings. We have the Sunshine Law, so we have to do everything in the open. We are subject to the right to know law. So if you want to see a copy of our budget, a copy of our expenses, a copy of our audit, you will have the ability to make a written request and receive that within 5 days, unless there's one of the additional extension periods that are permitted. We are, again, open once every the first and third Wednesday of the month. We have a public meeting, Elizabethtown Borough, which you are free to attend, and we encourage folks to attend and ask their questions. Otherwise, we're subject to everything that a public government body would be subject to.
Okay. I bring this up mainly because, and I have to blame myself for this, I was kind of surprised when I saw the literature saying that Northwest was insolvent. That was a bit of a shock to me. It shouldn't be too surprising, but I mean, it's something that even if we don't use regularly, individually, down the road, we're all aging out. So it's going to happen to all of us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay. One more pass for first-timers. All right, Ms. Handel.
Just following up, I forgot to mention this the first time I spoke, going back to services, and you are charging for a service. My objection being that service is a covered procedure under various insurance plans. I've used your service, Northwest. It was actually through an auto accident. My son, I applaud you. You did a wonderful job. I've also used Penn State Health's ambulance, again, for my son. They did a wonderful job as well. But they were always paid by my insurance company. I've heard a little bit about, well, you know, we're going to get money to be ready. Well, you know, that doesn't fly. It makes absolutely no sense. You are a company that has to operate 24 hours a day, just like the emergency room has to operate 24 hours a day, just like the hospital does, just like some manufacturing plants. Being in operations 24 hours a day doesn't negate your obligation to follow state, federal laws along with contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Handel. Sir.
That's David Swigert again.
Please say your name.
David Swigert. And just comments that being forced to pay to an authority, there's more examples of that as well. If you, in the local municipalities, and pretty much most municipalities in Pennsylvania, I think, at least locally, it's true, that if you live within 150 or 200 feet of public water or public sewer, you're forced to pay a tapping fee and connect. You don't have a choice if it's enforced the way the ordinance is written. So that's an example where that you do have to join an authority or pay to an authority, even if you don't want to. If you have a drain field and public sewer happens to come close to you, you're required to connect again. And the other one is, there's unfortunately in this area, in our local municipalities, there's many people, hundreds of thousands of dollars of sewer bills that have never been paid. But the sewer keeps going away. It goes to plant, it gets processed the same way. And yeah, those liens get placed in our house, but there's literally properties in Mountjoy and West Iowa Township that never paid the first sewer bill, but the services still are rendered. And this to be another when somebody asks the question, well, if you don't pay the bill, you're not going to get service. Well, that's not true, and so it's another example. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, ma'am.
My name is Love Eichler, and I live at 108 Timber Villa here in Elizabethtown, West Donegal. I want to thank you. I've benefited from the emergency, from the EMS. My husband and I both did. We've always belonged all these years. My husband died 2 years ago, and I almost died. If it hadn't been for your service, I very well might have. So I want to thank you for that. But I have a problem with putting a lien on somebody's home if they don't participate in this. I'm already paying for a friend of mine who does not have an extra penny. I buy it for her every year. And we have people in our development that are so tight, they do not have a penny to spare. And now I think about having liens on their homes because they can't afford the $85. That's the problem I have with this. I don't begrudge the $85. I can afford to pay that. but there are too many people that can't afford it, and they could end up losing their home as a result of this. I think something should be put into this where these people, it should go, I would think, more like according to their income or what they have available. I just have a problem with this when I think about the elderly people in my development and my friend who could never afford to pay for this.
Ma'am, I'll just let you know that that is one of the options available to the board to consider under the Municipalities Authorities Act. Unfortunately, if we don't enforce, people will just stop paying and we'll be back in the same circumstance. So there has to be some sort of enforcement collection mechanism, and that's why the legislature has put that in the law. Sir, would you like to go?
Brian Coons, 26 Canvasback Lane in Mount Joy Township. I'm a current paramedic with Northwest and plan on being a paramedic with MESA. Just some clarification when it comes to insurance payment. We bill insurance, but the bill then, the check comes to the person that had the services rendered to them. And it takes them to then pay the ambulance company. So I'm not saying anybody in this room does not pay their ambulance bill, but there are times where we do not get that money or see it over a period of time because somebody decided to pay another bill with it potentially. So also, I am a person that owns here in the coverage area. I cannot have kids, and I still pay school tax. So we all are responsible for paying things that we may not ever use, but that's part of being an American. Thanks.
Sir, I don't think you've gone yet.
I'm Jim Manton at 111 Fawn Drive in E-Town, Kenoi Township.
Can you say that again, sir? She couldn't.
Too fast, I'm sorry. Jim Manton from Kenoi Township at 111 Fawn Drive, E-Town address. I apologize if I'm going to be mentioning something that you may have already addressed, so forgive me if that's the case. But I have a few questions about this whole thing. It's not that I'm against it, but just some clarifications. Early on, I think someone had mentioned, the first speaker, I think, had mentioned that there are some entities, organizations that are exempt from this in E-Town. If that's the case, I'm curious as to what the reasons would be, and if we're able to know what organizations they are, and if they are exempt, such as Masonic Village, I think I heard was one of them. How do those people receive their services?
Well, actually, that's incorrect. Masonic Village will be billed, and they actually billed at a higher rate than you will be as a homeowner. The exempt entity I could think of, the best one would be the public school district.
Yeah, so there's two categories that are exempt. Schools age grades K through 12 and churches. Those are the only exemptions. And the rationale behind that was, and we could go down, there's other categories that overlap, but these were the two clearest. K through 12, probably about 99% of those students also live in one of these 7 municipalities. So they're part of that household fee of $85. The other piece we looked at was churches and said that generally those that worship attend church, probably presumably again within the 7 municipalities. But those are the only 2. All other, yeah, the employees at those establishments still pay, but the school itself doesn't pay for the students. But folks like Masonic Village, all other non-exempt properties that are exempt from real estate tax would be included.
Thank you for that. Another question would be, perhaps because there is some dissension here with this fee, there might be a way to put something in place for homes or organizations to opt out from the fee rather than making it mandatory. And let me think, what was my other question? Bear with me for a minute. With the development in the area, with the growing, I think this may have already been addressed, so again, forgive me, but there is a lot of growth going on in the Elizabethtown area. So how frequently is that growth going to be assessed and evaluated to determine changes in the fee that's most likely going to take effect?
So it would be similar to what a municipality or school district would do. They would look at it on an annual basis to determine how many homes are being served, see if there's a need for increase in services or increase in employment, so on and so forth, and then take into account the additional revenue that's generated by the homes that are built or the businesses that come into effect. So we'll look at that on an annual basis and take that into account in the budgeting process.
Thank you.
So before Ms. Handel goes a third time, is anyone have a first or second time? Okay, Ms. Handel.
Just to clarify on insurance billing and a comment that one gentleman a couple people ago had said, and I've actually heard this from the board members. We've used ambulance services, I've told you, several times from several different companies, Northwest and Penn State Health, and every time they've billed incorrectly. So that's definitely something that you'd have to work on with your employees. I knew what they did incorrectly. I called them and said, hey, you did this wrong. You billed the wrong insurance company. You used the wrong claim number, and it was corrected. But they don't correct things on their own. They just send the person the bill. If an insurance company sends the patient the bill, it is because you have not checked accept assignment on the claim. It might be that you totally don't want to deal with that insurance company at all. That way, if you don't want to deal with the insurance company at all, the insurance company is going to deal with the patient. It might be an error. I did insurance billing. I made that error before, and it happens. That's your error, and then it went to that person. But you're certainly, again, not the only medical provider that deals with this. And it's an error that you kind of have to take responsibility for. On top of that, though, if somebody doesn't pay their bills, I'm not their collection agency to fund them not paying their bills. So it's a little bit of that. A little bit of education's needed, but also these misstatements about, oh, we bill the insurance company, but it sends it to the patient. Sometimes that's because an error was made. Thank you.
Ma'am.
I'm Yolanda Huber, again, at 315 North Mount Joy Street in Elizabethtown. First of all, this is not something that is being forced on us. This is taxation with representation. We are all here today. We have elected a lot of the board members. So this is completely taxation with representation. We choose to live here, we choose to vote, or choose not to vote. Also, in terms of the billing, some people just don't have insurance. Because they don't want to deal with the insurance company, or they don't feel that they will ever use their services until they do. The problem is you can't predict when a person will or will not need a service, which is why they have to have the 24/7 readiness. We can't assume that things are not going to happen in our household or in our backyard. We have seen the news, things happen all the time, and eventually it hits home. A fee is not, we don't willingly pay our taxes, but most people pay their taxes because they want to live in a good school district. They want to have a higher standard of living. They want to live. Sometimes it's necessary to pay a fee to get the services that we want. And we are choosing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. You can freewheel it if you
want to move it, but popped it out. I do have a... Oh, yeah, sorry about that, young lady. Robert A. Rice Store, 206 Colebrook Road, Elizabethtown, West Donegal Township. Obviously, you picked the name Municipal Emergency Service Authority of Lancaster County. My question is, how far did we reach out to the municipalities beyond these municipalities to see if they were interested in participating with this MESA?
I think, maybe I'll let Mark answer this, but I think there are at least 14 at the outset.
We started with the 12 municipalities that are currently served by Northwest EMS.
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to know how far the EMS, Northwest EMS extends to
So
municipalities.
northern boundary would be like Conewago Township, Dauphin County. Eastern side would be Clay Township, and then it kind of comes back around. It kind of works very much east to west.
Okay.
And then the 7 represented here. So the ones that wouldn't be here would be like Clay, Penn, Raffo, Manheim, Borough, and Conewago.
Okay, great. So obviously, I'm assuming that you reached out to them and said, hey, look, we got this great idea. This is good for the public. I'm in support of it. You reached out to them. For some reason, they opted to stay out of it. I'd like to know what those reasons are, because I think it's a good thing. And then the other thing is, those municipalities that are not participating with it, and Northwest provides service in those municipalities, are they going to continue to provide services in those municipalities, knowing that those municipalities are not part of this Municipal Emergency Service Authority of Lancaster County?
So you had a couple questions in there. I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay,
so
go
specifically why they didn't join, that's a question you'd have to address with them individually. All 12 did participate in the first public hearing that occurred last summer in this process. In terms of services going forward, again, it'll be up to those individual municipalities to determine who they want their EMS provider to be starting in 2024.
Okay.
And it may be MESA, or it could be another EMS agency.
Okay.
And to the extent we do respond to those
Well, obviously-
second due calls, there's going to be mutual aid agreements working.
Obviously, just like Mr. Swaggart mentioned, the township supervisor, we provide the services because this is America. We provide the services. No one's cut short. They need emergency help, we get them emergency help. That's the way it is.
I'd like to give you another example. Some municipalities in the Commonwealth rely on state police coverage.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Some municipalities rely on having a regional service.
Right.
And some municipalities will have their own. And typically what you see is the cost is going to be in kind of at the difference with their service. So if your service from state police, they'll respond to murders and
Right.
kidnappings, but they don't come and enforce your local ordinances.
Right.
But your regionals will come and they'll do more patrols, they'll do things like that in your municipality. And when you get done to your locals, a lot of times they'll work with you on everything from jaywalking and curfew to the big stuff, which we call Part 1 offenses. So it really depends for those municipalities on what their priorities are and how much they want to spend on them a lot of times.
Yeah.
So those would be questions I would, as Mark said, to pose to those municipalities to why they don't believe a high level of ambulance service may not be important to them and why they wouldn't pay for it.
Okay, so obviously, the 911 calls comes into Lancaster-wide communications from Clay Township. EMS request. If the Northwest EMS has an available unit, do they get dispatched first, or does it go to the services that they selected? I guess it gets a little muddy.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on a lot of factors. We could get into a lot of technicalities, but, I'll use the terminology BLS, and maybe you know what that means.
I do.
It's kind of your basic life support
Basic
call.
life support, I'm very well
That would
aware
be
of that.
whomever the provider is that Clay Township is selected will be the first unit dispatched.
Very good.
If it's ALS, kind of as I mentioned earlier, the question on West Donegal Township and Mountjoy Township, its closest unit is dispatched for ALS calls.
Okay, that sounds very logical to me. And as I said when I ended my first conversation, is that just make sure you cross your Ts and dot your Is, because I know there's some questions and it sounds like there's some loose ends that aren't tied up. And please make sure that that happens, because down the road, that makes the board of directors look bad. It makes them look like they're not prepared, organized, and we definitely don't want that kind of image. So make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's, so that when this thing gets kicked off, it gets kicked off the right way, and people don't get a bad taste in their mouth because there were too many flaws in it, and it doesn't work properly for everyone, and all of a sudden, the MESA gets a bad name. Thanks.
Thank you. Ma'am, do you have?
Hi, my name is Gail Stauffer. I'm at 2113 Ashwood Lane, Elizabethtown, Mountjoy Township. I do have a question. I wanted you to explain to me again about the school district with whether they're getting like 1st to 8th grade. What was that?
Basically, what we're saying is we figure that the kids in school, mom and dad are paying a bill at home, okay? So we're not going to bill the school a second time for each one of the kids that we provide service to.
Okay.
Now, the teachers and the staff, the school district will pay the $10 per full-time equivalent
Okay.
for those. But the kids, we looked at it and said, well, mom and dad are going to pay that at home because they live within the municipality. So we didn't want to double tap people paying, because that's going to go into your school tax then, right? So you'll end up paying it there and you'll pay it at home for yourself. So
Right.
we thought that was a logical and rational reason to not include school districts.
So that's kindergarten through 12th grade then?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yeah,
Now,
I didn't
the
understand
college will get a bill.
that. Okay. Now, the other thing is, you said something about Masonic Village. What was that?
Masonic Village will be getting a bill, and actually, their rate is a little bit higher, if I'm not mistaken, or a lot higher.
If you want to back up several slides to the fee, we'll just put it up there and folks can kind of look at it on the way out. You see assisted living residents, you have acute care nursing beds. Again, those quantity of billing units represent all 7 municipalities, so that is not just Masonic Village, but it gives you an idea on an assisted living resident, because 6.3% of the calls go to those types of beds, it represents $142,000 of cost. Translates into $470 per bed or per unit. Whereas a single-family dwelling unit, most of us in this room at home, is $85. So it all ties back to the methodology and that 5-step process of how the fee was calculated.
Okay, so my mother is in an apartment. So would she get billed for that, or would that be Masonic Village getting billed for that? And that will, I'm sure they'll get it from
Yeah,
her mom one way
so-
or another.
So at this point, again, the bill goes to the property owner. So the property owner in that case is Masonic Village.
What they do
It
is-
kind of goes back to the tenant-landlord situation.
Yeah, okay,
We can't dictate what the property owner does with the bill,
right,
but presumably, one would assume you want to pass that on to the tenant
right.
with like a $7 a month rent increase. Or in the case of this, you adjust your fees for those services at Masonic Village or wherever it may be accordingly.
Okay. I know they're having a meeting out there, my mom told me that, but I wanted to understand it myself, because sometimes she doesn't understand it either.
Sure.
And another thing I wanted to thank you is you do a wonderful job. The medics had saved my son years ago, so I really appreciate that. And thank you.
Thank you. All right, so would anyone else like to make a public comment for the record? Okay. Deb, did you want to summarize and close things up?
Just a few comments that I wrote down. Yes, there are other EMS authorities across Pennsylvania. We are the 9th one. We are the only one who is implementing a fee. Again, it is a fee, it is not a tax. We can argue or agree to disagree on that one. We understand that this is a novel idea in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There are many areas that we need to fine tune, but we did not want to put the cart before the horse. So we will fine tune all of those. What are we going to do? Does it make sense to lien a property for $85? Probably not. Does it make sense for $170 if it's 2 years? We have not fine-tuned those yet, but we do understand the importance of crossing those Ts and dotting the Is, because we have many municipalities and counties across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who have called us and are looking at this as a model for their area, for an answer to their EMS crisis. As I said, Township News had 10 pages on that, on this issue in this month's issue of Township News. And I also wanted to say, yes, Northwest EMS is having some issues and facing insolvency, and it is not, I want to be clear on that, it is not because they are mismanaging the money at Northwest EMS. It is because there is not enough money coming in to run the EMS as we want it to be run as citizens here. We are used to the exemplary service that we have received from them. They do not go out and buy a brand new ambulance. They buy an ambulance and have it re-chassied. You know, a starting paramedic or starting EMT makes $19 an hour. You can go to Sheets and make more than that. These are the people that are going to come out and save your life, possibly. The other thing I wanted to just mention is that we have a group of Northwest EMS paramedics and EMTs in the back here, and I want to thank you for your service.
Okay. Before we end, again, if you want to file an objection, you have 45 days from today, which actually expires on Monday, November 13th. You would have to file a written objection with the municipality in which you live so they have notice and can tally and calculate how many objections they receive. So again, your municipal building, your township office, your borough office is where objections would need to be filed.
Okay, so I believe that ends our hearing.
Please come up so we can capture it.
Want me to say my name again? Okay, Robert A. Reisdorf, 206 Colebrook Road, Elizabethtown, West Donegal Township. Deb, I just want to say thank you very much for those comments that you made there at the very end about managing the money well, being responsible, the oversight is being done in a proper way. I appreciate that. The folks that do the job getting paid $19 an hour seems pretty low to me for the service they provide. I have no problem at all providing additional income for those people. But I do appreciate what you just said regarding cost control, because there is some areas in these municipalities, and it's a fact, it's been proven, that the cost control isn't being cost control, and it needs to be better. Thanks, you did a great job.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. From one of these guys. Do I have a second? Okay, so moved and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose. All right, thank you folks for coming out.